Very good. We'll get started here. This is the basic livestock stockmanship session, so just want to make sure you're in the right room. Thank you for coming. My name is Kent Solberg. I'm the livestock grazing specialist for the Sustainable Farming Association, and we have our distinguished panel here today. Bryan from Lakeside Prairie Farm, Jim VanDerPol from Pastures at Plenty Farm, and Tom Prieve from Paradox Farm. So we're each going to give a little piece of this as we go, and then open it up for questions and discussion at the end. I'm just going to start with some basic stockmanship stuff, very basic. A person can spend a lifetime learning this, even the people who are some of the true experts. If some of you have ever heard the name Bud Williams, who's now deceased, he will say, people will ask him, well, how did it go today? And some days it goes better than others. They're animals. They have their own mind. They can be unpredictable at times. But there are some basic things, I think, that can go a long way to helping us working livestock in a safe and humane manner. And that's becoming a bigger issue these days. Beef Quality Assurance Program through National Cattlemen's Association is becoming a big deal for beef and dairy. There's a lot of humane livestock certification options that are out there. They're going to start requiring, and you're going to see more of this stuff in the future. And it's just a good idea to keep us and anybody else working on the farm safe. So just a few basics. Okay, we're having some technology problems here. It's not working. All right, we'll go with this. Still not going. Excuse me. Keep hitting the wrong button. Apologies. All right, start. Let's see if this works. There we go. So, if you've been around livestock at all, this one's huge. Just staying calm. And sometimes it's really hard to do. You're in a hurry, you get places to go, people to meet, things to do, and that can be a real stinker at times. But I think this is just absolutely critical to safe and humane livestock handling. Being quiet reduces a lot of stress. Temple Grandin talks a lot about noise being a huge issue around livestock, and it's being very stressful to them. Avoiding sudden movement is a key point also. And sometimes you can't avoid it. I mean, we got ice on the ground and stuff. I notice I'll be around my animals and slip on the ice, and you try and catch yourself, and they go 14 different directions. So, do your best to avoid these things if at all possible. Be patient. This again, you get places to go, things to do, and some days they just are not wanting to cooperate for whatever reason. But patience is absolutely huge in this. We need them to do things they need to do too. So working with the animal's natural instinct and limitations. This is huge, and we're going to talk more about that as we go on today. But there's certain things they want to do, and there's certain limitations to what they can do for us or can do with us. And it's almost working like a team. I mean, we got to learn how to work with them, okay, not against them. Most of these are herd animals, and they want to be connected to a herd or a flock. That's really where they want to be. When they get separated out or even in small groups, some of them get a lot more flighty, a lot more nervous, a lot more stressed than others. So if we can work them at all as a group, things tend to go better. And it does require training and practice. And I'm by no means a complete expert in this. I'm still learning, and some days it doesn't go right. But these basics, again, do go a long way in just making life easier for you and for them. And I already talked about the DQA program for both, and that includes both dairy and beef, because about 20% of our beef in the food chain is from dairy animals. So there's a lot of work going on this, a lot of training. We're looking at building some on-farm training coming up this year across farms in Minnesota with the Minnesota State Cattlemen's and So this is just kind of the overview and introduction. And we're going to be talking about hogs and small ruminants also today. So want to talk about one of the limitations these animals have, and that's a blind spot behind them. And that's pretty important. They can't, just the way their eyes are situated on their head, they can see. They have huge peripheral vision, but there is this blind spot behind them. And if we get in that blind spot, it's just much harder to work with them. So be conscious of that. They also have flight zones and balance points. So if you're like me, I got a few animals that don't have a flight zone, like your typical 4-H calf. You know, most of those don't have a flight zone. You got about lay on them or whatever to get them to move. But they do have a flight zone. It is different for many animals or for each individual animals. This is just an example. The handlers are just in the middle of the flock there in the sheep picture, and those animals want to be a certain distance away, okay? So that's something to remember, but it's also something we can work with. If I get my clicker to work here, pointer, there we go. So this circle is kind of a flight zone here, and we can move in and out of that flight zone and get that animal to either move forward or backwards for us, or get him to go the direction we want to go. The other piece to remember here is this point of balance. Some people call it a pivot point, and it's right at the shoulder. And so if we're behind that pivot point and we move inside of their flight zone, most of these animals are going to move away. What did I do? There. Oh. They're going to want to move away. And then when we back out, we're taking the pressure off of them. And they're going to want to slow down. We're going to see a video here in a little bit, and you'll see the handler moving in and out of that pressure zone to work animals. And that's another key piece to doing this. If we're in front of that pivot point here, and we move within their flight zone, that's the animal's going to want to turn and go back the other direction. So with knowing these key kind of zones for these animals, there's a lot of handling we can get done in a very safe and efficient manner. There's the flight zone again. I do want to talk about just basic handling systems here. Safety, that's always paramount for both you and the animals. So that's what we're thinking about. Cattle, sheep, most of these animals, when we take them somewhere, they want to go back from where they came from. Because you're moving them into a place they don't necessarily want to be. It might be from away from the herd of the flock. They're going to want to go back, but we can use that to our advantage for handling these animals, and we'll talk about a system like that in a moment. The two major systems that are out there are either Temple Grantland stuff or Bud Williams type stuff, and they're a little different, but the handling piece goes a long way. Take advantage of the natural circling behavior. They tend to want to circle when they go back around, and we can use that again as we design our facility to handle those animals. And as we handle those animals, it's something to keep in mind. And they don't like sharp turns into blind spots. That just really throws them for a loop. And they're going to balk at that, and it's going to be really difficult. And they tend to prefer to move towards something that's well lit or lighted instead of into a dark hole that they can't see. And that can be a real bugger with some of these stock trailers, especially some of the old ones. They're pretty dark inside, and some people do try and bring them into buildings to load and handle them, and that can be a challenge too if they've never been in there. Now it's something they're used to going into, we can work to manage that way, but if it's not something they're used to going in and forcing them into a dark building, if it's bright sunshine outside, boy, they want to put the brakes on. So it's just some basic things. I have just a few examples of some simple systems. There are very complex systems out there for handling large numbers of animals. This is one designed by Temple Grantland. Her website's there. You can go on there and get these plans, but this is just a pretty simple system. I'm not going to spend time on all the specifications here because you can look that up. But basically, we're working in a circular fashion. We bring the animals in from over here, and there's a series of gates to help move them forward and protect you. And then they kind of want to, it allows them to circle back and try and come back around, which would lead them into either a squeeze chute or a loading type chute there. Another example here, this is just another small person system. Again, we're working with that circular motion, animals wanting to go in circles and come back around to where they were before. Here's just an example. You'll see there's a whole bunch of examples on the internet. Some of them aren't very well designed. Here's just one example. My clickers, is that showing up there? There we go. Yeah. So this loading chute is here. Well, here we're using the idea of that circular system again, but then all of a sudden, boom, we're off 120 degrees off a different direction. And that can be a bit of a challenge when we're doing that. So this may not be the most ideal situation. We may want to move that loading chute to a different location in order to maximize those animals wanting to circle back around. These aren't necessarily ideal, but you know, sometimes we got to work with what we got. These happen to be either in the corner of a building, and I've seen sites where these could work very, very well, or in the corner of an existing pen, and with just some interior modifications that you could do yourself, especially if it's on a dirt floor. Pretty easy to do that you could get working with this kind of circular motion, getting animals to work back around. You may be able to create a very simple and effective loading facility for your animals. And it's loading these animals is where a lot of us, that's kind of one of the more challenging times. It's not something you're going to do every day, but if you're loading them out for sale or harvest, we want an efficient facility to do that, a safe facility to do that for both you and the animal. So one way to do this, and I brought this up, is a gentleman by the name of Bud Williams, who's since passed away, but he was the designer of this thing called a bud box, and it's basically a blind box. You can do this a number of different ways. Animals come in from a holding area. This one happens to be off to your right here. There's a gate here. You walk animals into this blind box, and there are some minimum specifications on how to do this, depending on the number of animals and size of animals you want to use. This is probably about bare minimum here, this 14 by 20 to 30 feet. You come in behind, close the gate, and based on where you position yourself, we'll look at some things in a moment here on that. These animals are, again, they're going to want to circle back around, but you can direct them right into that exit area, either into some sort of head gate or squeeze chute, or even into a trailer. Here's how, this is just another example. The blind box is off, that's not very bright. The blind box is on the upper side there where it says bud box, and the animals are coming in from the holding area. This option here, the animals can be directed one of two ways, either to a loadout or to a squeeze chute situation. But the concept is the same. You see by that dashed, line there that the animals are circling around, but then just by adjusting those gates and the position of a handler, it's allowing them to move them one direction or another in a fairly safe and efficient manner. So here's just another example. This is back to the blind box being at the end. So they're coming down a holding area. This is the video we're going to watch here in a moment. Is going to be just like this. The animals come down that blind box, the handler closes the gate behind them, then they position themselves over here. The animal's going to want to circle around, and you want them to come back around this way, and then you move this way, and then based on that flight zone concept, it directs them back towards, they want to go back the way they came, they're circling back around, and it shoots them right up that chute there. So with that, let's take a look at our video here. So they're coming into that blind box.
We can't see up there.
Oh, rats. Sorry, I'm watching it here. Okay. Our session hero. Yeah. Still not on the screen. There we go. Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so they're coming down into that blind, into the bud box there. And then they're going to close that gate. This is Rod Gill from Texas, I think Texas A&M. Now he's going to just watch him. He'll move forward into their flight zone. Get him to come around, and then he's just using that flight zone distance to help cut out animals and keep them heading right up that chute. Just stepping in and out of that flight zone. He's backing off a little and then moving forward. So, pretty cool. Oops. Back to our regularly scheduled program here in a moment. There we go. So, bud box. And we've got some people who have some experience with that. They're going to talk in a little bit here. I do want to talk more a little bit about loading considerations, because that's probably the time when you're going to be, other than working animals, for if you're doing some vet work, prey checking, whatever, that's going to be one of the more stressful times. So let's just talk about a few considerations. Have everything, some of this is really just common sense, have everything set up before you're going to load. Just makes it easier for you and the animal. We don't want to mix animals in the trailer and compartments in the trailer. Little ones could get crushed basically in there. So we want to sort by size. Floor height of the loading chute should match the trailer height. Boy, is this huge. It's not always possible if we're loading in a field situation, but those animals will really balk at having to step up a lot of times, and this can make or break. You can have everything else right. If you miss this one, it can be really a pain. Having a solid loading surface, no broken boards in the chute or whatever, there's solid footing there for the animals. That's very important. No gap between the trailer, and if you have a chute that they're actually going up, make sure there's not a gap there where a leg's going to drop through. That's just a matter of getting everything lined up and having everything set before you get going. Check out the interior trailer. A lot of us are working with older equipment, older trailers. Are the boards all there? Are they in good shape? Is there going to be a foot that goes through a board? Check that out. And then if you've got dividers in there, are those automatic catches going to work, and are they secure? That's safety for you. You start loading big animals and they turn around and want to exit on you. You need that gate closed behind them. It needs to latch, or you're going to end up probably in ER, getting put back together. Make sure that that thing all works. Go in and test it beforehand. Everybody, if you've got help working with you, make sure they know how that stuff works. Also, Jake, you can probably just pick up your goats and chuck them in. You probably don't need all this stuff. So, and then consider the load distribution on the trailer. Another safety thing. How well is it going to tow? Is that thing going to be flopping all over? Pull-type trailers are going to be different than goose-type trailers. And we're going to listen to a little video by Rod again here, and he's going to talk about some of these considerations. So now we're back to this. Hopefully I can make this work. Let's see if this goes. All right. You got to get out of the presentation. Yep.
Perhaps the most important aspect of successfully transporting cattle is making sure you handle them slowly, quietly, and patiently prior to the loading process. Dr. Ron Gill is an expert on animal handling practices, and he's instructed thousands of cattle producers from across the United States on low-stress handling principles.
As we get ready to ship cattle or move them off your operation or transport them anywhere, you really need to start planning as to what's going to be located where in the trailer. You need to sort the calves off early on so they don't get injured or hurt in the process of loading. That way you can load them in separate compartments as well. Then you need to pay attention to the size of the cattle that you're going to put in each compartment. You don't want to mix large cattle and small cattle in the same compartment. When we focus on low-stress livestock handling, try to focus on getting cattle to work for us and not trying to force the cattle to go somewhere they really don't want to go. So you have to establish movement in a set of cattle and then try to manage that movement so reduce the stress. When you're loading cattle out, again, you want to make sure everything's set and ready to go, and then bring the cattle up and start the loading process. Once again, right here, we've got to raise the floor on this particular chute where it matches up with the back of that trailer. There's also another issue with this chute. The boards on the side of it need to be replaced. Once again, that's all for safety of the livestock. A lot of people think the sides of the chute have to be solid. That's not necessarily so. And in low-stress livestock handling, oftentimes it's better to have open-sided chutes that are safe where they can't get a foot out the bottom, but they can see you when you're in the right position. The problem with open-sided facilities is that they can see you when you're in the wrong position. So from a low-stress standpoint, I actually like these open-sided corrals, load-outs, where the cattle can see you when you're right. Once I have everything set at the loading surface, and I know it's safe for the cattle to come across that gap between the trailer and the flooring, I like to go inside the trailer. This is the next area where you can really have some problems and issues. You need to make sure you inspect these safety latches on the partition gates, not only for your safety, but also for the safety of the cattle. So you want to make sure they're fully functional, all the interior latches are right. Once again, open these gates, open them all the way back, and latch them securely. You don't want them coming, drifting in front of the cattle as you're loading. You might have to reload, or cattle will hang themselves on the edge of these gates, causing injury. It's very dangerous. You just need to make sure you do that. I like to do this process from the inside of the trailer. It makes me take one final look at my flooring, my latches, to make sure everything's right and ready before I load the cattle. So once again, go all the way to the front of this trailer, checking your latches. Make sure that you open them where they are safe and secure. The other aspect of this we don't talk about very often are these self-catch latches. These are very important. You can push that gate and it will latch itself. If you're having to try to pin a gate at this point in time, it puts you in a very unsafe position. So if at all possible, go to these self-catch latches, and then you can secure them normally from the outside to make sure they don't come undone. If they come undone in transportation of the cattle, that can cause some injury to the livestock as well. So once again, do your interior inspection, see if you see any loose wiring on older trailers in particular, see if anything's been pulled loose, and just make sure everything's secure. One thing you really want to do, and probably the last thing as you exit the trailer, is check the flooring and make sure it's secure, that won't have any breakthroughs. The other aspect of it you need to be cautious about is the traction on the flooring. You don't want slippage in a trailer. This particular trailer has very good grooves to it. The issue with a new trailer, such as this one, is these are so good that if cattle are fighting in confinement and enclosement of a trailer, they can actually rasp their feet off. So that's one reason it's extremely important to use low stress methods to get these cattle on here where they'll be very calm when they get in on this flooring. It's really good, the traction's great, but with scraping or pushing of their feet against that, it can actually cause abrasion, which can lead to foot abscesses, which is another safety concern in their cattle. Once you're through inspecting the trailer, the next thing is to decide how you're going to load that trailer. Where you want to need your weight distribution, what type of cattle you want wearing the trailer. And that depends a lot on the type of trailer you're using. Whether or not it's a bumper pull trailer or a tongue pull trailer. A fall behind is another term that's used for them. Those trailers have to have the majority of the weight in the front. You want to balance it out to some extent, but if you get it too heavy on the rear of the trailer, it has a tendency to whip as you pull that trailer down the highway. So you want to make sure that you have an equal, correct load distribution in those trailers. On a gooseneck type trailer, it's not that big an issue where the weight's located in that trailer. You don't necessarily want it all up at the front, but it will not hurt the pulling and towing capacity of that vehicle. On the pull behind trailers, you also don't want to load that trailer relative to the towing capacity of the vehicle that you're gonna be pulling it with. That leads to very unsafe traveling conditions. So once again, make sure you have your load densities right number of cattle for each partition within the trailer, and make sure that when you have all that in your mind, everything's sorted right, then you can go load the cattle. As we get ready to load trailers, a lot of people like to put their cattle right behind the trailer or in a crowd tub before they're ready to load those cattle. When you do that, you lose movement. Part of this low-stress livestock handling and getting cattle to load on their own is to have that movement once again and manage it. You need to work from the front of the cattle as much as possible. This is a fairly long way to the trailer, so I've got to send those cattle where they want to go on that trailer by themselves. If you had somebody working from the outside, they could be working in this area in front of me and continue to put a little pressure on those cattle. As we get these cows up close to the back of the trailer, I want to always go to the gate and open it before I start to load them. Ideally, I'd like to send these cattle past this gate and then bring them back to it. But this particular setup will work as well. Get the cattle lined out, have them come around me, put pressure on them. All I have to do is work from the front of these cattle to send them on that trailer. Back off of them, let them load themselves. You've sent them, there's nothing to stop the cattle at this point in time. You can stay a safe distance. Either you can follow them up and close them in the trailer. Once again, they're on that trailer, they're quiet and they're calm. It's interesting a lot of times when cattle load that easy, people seem to think all of this was an accident. That's part of the key to understanding low-stress livestock handling is where your body position needs to be to make it look that easy. And once again, if you're in the right position and you send those cattle right, that's a key word, it looks like you're not doing anything.
I'm sorry, we're getting all the way through this. Review, yes. So, whoops. All right. Brian, you wanted a picture of the bud box?
Yeah.
Okay, which one do you want? I'm sorry. That one, that one? That one?
That one.
No. Okay, so Brian's worked with the bud box a bit. He's gonna talk about his experience in handling animals.
So I'm Brian Simon. I have Lakeside Prairie Farm. Been raising cattle for 7 years. And I move my cows off the farm 4 or 5 times a year. We rent some pasture, 2 separate pastures, and then I graze some cover crops, and then some other off the farm grazing. So initially when we got started, I had no clue about this. Don't have a background in livestock. I got in this from into farming from a conservation point of view, and my love of Prairie and managing Prairie through livestock. So I had no concept. So when we first started, we're like, we got to get these cows from over to this next pasture. Now we got to load them up. Okay, how are we going to do that? Well, I've heard, and since I'm pretty cheap, beginning farmer, I don't have the resources to buy all the equipment, so I invested in cattle panels. Well, some of them are just gates, so some are 18-foot gates that are pretty heavy to move around, but that's what I got. Some are a little taller, the cattle panels, not the woven, the wire panels, but panels, and so we set them up and usually in a circle. That's how we started. We set it in a circle and run our poly wire up into the corral, and then we got them in there, and then we had a chute, just 2 gates coming off that circle, and then the trailer. So we went around and around and around and around and around and around. And it might have worked for the first groups, because we only had a 16-foot trailer. We're moving maybe 15 head, and so we get 4 in at a time. We do it multiple times, and it might have worked for the first review groups, but definitely by the last groups, they don't have none of us. They were tired of being chased around and around and around and around, and they're jumping out of the corral over the top of 5-foot corrals, and then what do you do? So we made some mistakes early on, but then we found out about the bud box, and it really made a huge difference in our livestock. So we set it up with cattle with panels, just portable panels, and we still have the big catch corral, and we get them in there. But then once they're in there, so you can look. We get them in a big area off the farm in our pasture. We set it up so they're in there, and then we just take a group at a time, however many of trailer load. We let them in here, and then and it works slick. But then I had some trouble this last year. So with this bud box, and there's a few things that I did wrong. I need to turn my gates or my panels upside down so that they can't get their noses underneath the panel. Because if they can, they often will, especially the last group. The last group to go, there's no other. The rest of the herd is gone. The last group they've seen a lot of action, but still I've had one heifer lift up the whole thing. She got under it, she's out. And then I also had, on a different time, I had a yearling heifer stick her head through the middle and get her head stuck, and she lifted the whole bud box up, and then she laid down with her head underneath it, and the whole box was up on top of her. So, yeah, Kelly.
I was just gonna offer a suggestion, one solution to that, and it's something that Ron Gill was talking about in the movie, is letting them create the movement. You never push them from behind, because that creates stress and speed. If you let them walk into that box on their own, they're under less stress, and they shouldn't be looking for an escape because it was their decision to go in there in the first place. So you're not pushing them from behind, you're actually almost, and it's hard to explain without watching you do it, you're almost leading them from the front and getting them into that area. Because if they're not under stress, they shouldn't be looking for an escape. It's just one thing that might, and I don't know your cows either, it's going to vary between cows a little bit.
So, yeah, to do it regularly, they get used to it. So making the stockmanship a big part of your system, and getting the cows used to what you're doing instead of just once a year you do this, that's important. So one thing, another mistake I made, so having this point where this gate shuts here, I was using twine to tie it, so I digged around, spend too much time securing this gate. This needs to be a quick thing. They're in there, so I was interrupting the flow. They would get in here, they hit the back, they come out, and then I'm pushing them, they go back. And so you need to shut this gate and get in this position, and then they'll go around you. So that was a mistake that I made. So they were spending too much time in there. So flow was a big part of this. And I'm also, now I've started tying my corners with put T-posts in and fastening ahead of time so that they can't lift the whole system up. Yeah, so that once I implemented the bud box, it made a huge difference in my system. And then another important thing is that to have this chute long enough so that all of these animals would get in there. And often I would have just one. When I started, I just had one length of gates, so 16 feet or 12 feet, and then the trailer is up there. And that was too short, so then there would still be animals in here, and I'd have an animal go into the trailer and then turn around and come back out, and then they're meeting in this, you need to have this long. Good, that's my experience with the bud box.
While he's up here, any questions on the bud box, Carmen?
Yeah, portability. You move that from pasture to pasture and set it up?
That's what I do. I don't have a permanent corral on my farm, so I gotta take all my gates, load them in the stock trailer, haul them to the next spot, and take it all down, put it all in the trailer, and that's what I do.
These portable panels are absolutely amazing. I mean, because they're portable. We can do so many things with them. And if you're a new or beginning farmer, it's probably a far better investment to invest in something like that if you're gonna have potential of renting, if you're gonna need to probably rent land here, there, and wherever to get going. Now you, like Brian said, you can go anywhere with this stuff and be able to load out animals. I often hear people who want to integrate livestock on their farm, for example, to graze cover crops, and like, I have no fence, I have no loadout facility. It's like, we got portable ways that we can do this stuff now. So, and they're a great investment, and if you happen to get in the pickle where you've got to exit farming or livestock for any reason, you want to talk about a piece of equipment that holds value at an auction. I've seen them go for more than what you can buy them for new at times. It's crazy. So it's an investment that it's pretty easy to recruit your return on investment. So they're just, I think they're great. So
Just only one little side note to that. Good luck finding used ones for a cheap price.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So don't expect you're gonna like walk away with a sweet deal or something, like that's rare. We had that issue with ours, so we just decided to say, F it, we're gonna buy brand new.
Yeah, they hold their value. Ivan.
We've had that issue also with our system, with the last animals being agitated from being in position too long, or everybody else has left. And what we did this year, that we did it a couple of years ago in one spot, we decided to do it this year after several years of problems with it sticking their head through. We're doing that. We zip tied plywood on the side there. We used full sheets in some spots. Most of it, we just used a half sheet of 1/2-inch plywood, zip tied it on the gate, end of the story. They had no place to stick their head through anymore. And you can just dip them off and reuse your plywood somewhere else.
Were you doing it all the way around or just on the gate that
I would do
closes
it just
behind
on
you?
the end where their heads are pointed right there, right where they want to get.
Down higher.
Yeah, right
This is
where
where
they feel like they can, because they're looking for a way away from you.
We just use the blue tarp, just tie the blue top up there.
Another thing I would add to it, I think I need to make some, I don't know what they're called, but just some pieces of metal. You saw it on the video where they have this, it's just a square metal frame to stick the gates in, because then here that,
So they can't push them out.
yeah, they can't push it
Right,
out.
they do make those.
Yeah, well, you can make them cheap, just weld them up. That has been a problem. I'll sometimes have, trying to turn around in this and put pressure on it, and then they start falling over. So I think that would make a big difference too.
Okay, just curious, do you find after, if you move your animals a lot, that maybe you could just substitute, put the trailer for the exit, or would that be a nightmare for cattle, I guess? Would the trailer be the exit? Like
Well,
on
yeah,
that diagram there,
that's
without
what
having to
yeah.
shoot?
That's where my trailer is at the exit.
I meant, like, right up to the back of it.
Right to here?
Yeah. Are
Well,
they
I don't think it would work that way.
Yeah.
I think you gotta have,
You place a great motion of them going
Yeah,
to
they
the
gotta be
narrow
going.
area,
Sure.
so they're pushed by the cow line.
so I think, yeah, you gotta, like I was saying before, you gotta have this to be a good long ways there, so they can get momentum forward.
Other questions? Yeah,
This might be a dumb question, but I had never heard of like closing the gap between the trailer height and the floor height. Are you just using boards? Are you dirt there? Like, what are you doing? to
whatever.
Anything?
Yeah, some of these ramps you can elevate, and get them to the right height. Dirt mount could use, anything you can use to help. You may have to fabricate. Some people make them, they tow like a trailer or something you can throw in the back of the trailer, whatever works for you, but just something solid. so they can minimize that step up, because that really breaks that
Yeah, it does.
momentum.
Okay.
It really does.
I haven't done anything with that, and it is a problem for me. I
Yeah.
noticed that they lock
They
it.
stop right there.
But I think I want to weld up a piece of ramp off the back end of the trailer so that I can just drop it down. That would solve it.
Kelly, what do you guys have?
The first group we'll bring in will be more experienced cows, and, we have very few that will balk at it.
Okay.
We'll just get the younger ones following right behind the older ones and see what there's.
Ivan?
Most of them just step up, it's on, we have bumper trailer and it's only a foot. Most of them jump right up, but if it gets to be a lot of a gap, then yeah, it's an issue.
Like park on the hills.
Park on Hill, there you go, yeah. Tom, how about you?
I don't have a handling facility.
Okay.
I just moved from pasture to pasture, but the one comment I make is reinforce what you said here. It has to be someplace they want to go. Bison are trained being. Bison only go where they want to go. And so you have to work with that and work with the herd. And that's the minimum stress. If they're going someplace, they want to go.
How about you, Jim? What do you do with goats?
Border collie behind them really makes them go as fast, but not, that's what, I actually have kind of gone to something more along versus just trying to, I'm curious about trying to incorporate this without the chute maybe for them. Just having the trailer and trying to move them across. Yeah, 'cause we usually do like a long lane kind of working them in there, and we find that you kind of have to, because sometimes they do balk at it. And my mistake before is making the lane too narrow, so when you're walking in there, then they really freak out. So if you make the lane wider, then you can still walk around them and keep trying them so that they don't totally lose them, I guess, freak out.
Anna, how about you guys?
I don't know, I think this is great. We kind of have a makeshift blood box, but I don't know. What do you think?
Well, first of all, we're Holsteins, and it's not the issue. You know what I mean? You can have that kind of an issue, but it's just not, you know, if I have an issue, it's always across. I'm not kidding. And then, although our trailer is too high off the ground, you know, sometimes I do something like that in a little one. We move a lot into a lot, 5, 6 different pastures, load and reload, and once they start small, and once they have that initial jump, the danger part for the animals is they're jumping up and they're jumping off. That's bad. But once they get that, I never have trouble. But this, we're going to put this in a few places. The blood box, I guess I've never even seen it. But this, otherwise, like for a Holstein, I shouldn't even say this, but where this gate shuts, put another one right above the A, a Holstein, and swing it this way, and you could put your trailer against that, providing they're used to being loaded. Not a, you're gonna zoo if you're gonna try to, you know, they eventually get tired, right? The other thing is don't be fooled that, like, if you're trying to load them, in my opinion now, say you have 15 to load, and the last 5 are the most difficult. Now that's because they're the smartest. They're not because they're not getting wore out. I mean, they are to some extent, but they're the ones that avoided you each time you let them go. So if I know that kind of an animal is in there, you know, that's gonna be more difficult, that one's gonna go on first, no matter what it takes. I'll sort that over here. And, but it's, yeah, it's good.
Knowing your animals.
Yeah, no, and, but we could just set something up like that. I use just hay bales sometimes, or see the Holstein, especially the main animals I move like pregnant Holsteins. Man, our cows, I can have a animal, she milked cows, she didn't even have her fence on all winter.
Any need to put any kind of bedding or anything in the trailer?
That's kind of a personal preference. If it's gonna mean loose footing and they're gonna slip, I'd leave it out, but some people like it because it helps clean up, but that's kind of a personal choice.
They get sloppy in there, with some chips to keep the traction better.
Traction better, yeah. Yeah, so traction's really what you're after. All right, let's keep going. We got two more. Tom, you want to come up and chat about small ruminants here?
Chat about small ruminants and small farmers.
I want to just mention about the loading trailers. So I knew better, but this summer I put one steer in a trailer and I didn't shut the divider. So we had the whole room of a 16-foot bumper trailer. And I ended up tipping over on the way because he went to the back. And then, so the trailer tipped over. So just a recommendation for everyone. So wow, shut your divider.
Cool. Well, hi everyone, I'm Tom Prieve from Prairie Farms, who my wife, I've heard many of you, and we got a little bit of everything there, but we like small stuff. So we have mostly small stuff. So I'll talk a little bit about goats and sheep and super basics, and particularly for anybody interested in thinking about getting into livestock. Some things I was fairly entertained with these guys. 30-year veteran of a large animal veterinarian. I used to work on something called VanDerPol that had a lot of livestock and not necessarily much facilities. So I almost got to see it all. The family look in the eye, we gotta get the cows in. And that machinery lined up to a door and a full barn that big with a door in the middle, and they're gonna run in there. Come a long way, so that's good. So I happened to get my Mother Earth News. Anybody get that? A good goat movement. You guys see that? New York Farms. So everything you know already, but it's just nice to read it in there for people moving stuff and hear the advice that they're giving. So I want to start out and notice the first word that these guys did a good job talking about. Starting out especially, just think portability. You just, no way you're going to predict what you're going to end up with. And it's just really a good way to spend your money. My go-to favorite for our small ruminants are these green 12-foot gates. They're actually a gate. From Fleet Farm and far and away the cheapest, $5 a foot. You can get them on sale, watch sales like a hawk. Rebates and all this stuff, and these little cards they give. So we probably have 100 of them by now. It's so handy. And that and hog animals are useful, but they're not. They have their limitations for small ruminants. And then I also put this up there. You know, the name of this deal. I'm looking at safe, effective, and humane methods. So analyze who's this going to be out with your stock. And think about what kind of stock you're going to have, and how tame they're going to be, and your limitations, your abilities, and facilities to handle them. Consider all that when you're thinking about getting your class of animals. Class of animals is not just cows or sheep or goats or pigs or chickens. It's beef versus dairy. You're going to have babies, all that stuff. Think about that as a big difference in how you're going to have to handle these animals, provide for them. As Kent alluded to, we got our title here of humane methods. That's right next door to animal welfare, and that's right next door to animal rights. And our city friends are very attuned to all this stuff. And the industry is picking up on that message big time. Talking that. So I was driving down here looking at some of these Holsteins, humped up, not much bedding along the interstate, thinking that's shouldn't be looking like that. Whatever you can to take care of these things. And I know this winter is tough. You get bed almost every day. And to keep them looking good. All right, so here's one of these deals from this, these guys are in New York from my Mother Earth News, but goats have a high tolerance for cold, but a low tolerance for wind and rain, so it's knowing your animals. Now this you don't have to provide luxury accommodations like this, but think about what you're going to do on the long rainy spells or long, cold, snowy spells like this. Our hair sheep are just lumps of snow laying out there, and they're happy as can be, but the goats are shaking like a leaf, and they're shivering away. So they need some windbreak, they need some bedding. Particularly the dairy animals. Dairy, probably, arguably, the highest class of husbandry required to keep an animal thriving for you. Definitely need to have some warm, dry bedding if you want milk. They'll survive. They survive and thrive out there. And just another example here of some portability of panels. We can make extra little pens for kidding, locking the kids away at night, whatever we want to do, catching them for any reason. And this is the Cadillac, a splurge, and get some of those with the wire underneath if you're going to have kids, because kids will climb through those other ones. Back when I was younger, guys had less money, then I would just in those situations use the 12-foot gauge with a hog panel behind it when I needed it. But, and just another shot at that. And the building guys are in here, they're proud of my gate. They're purposing something. So very handy just to be able to put different kind of configurations on your barns. And it also lets us rotate in our barn too. So when come summer, we put them over here with sand, and this gets hauled out and dries out the whole summer. And that's where our winter pack is, so we can rotate inside. And you can do this in any open front shed or anything like that. Always on fresh ground, so need that dryness. And like Bryan said, you can get a little bud box out of those pretty easily. And then when you get outside, you also got to think about be humane again and have your animals thrive. Think about what you're going to do to protect them from elements out in the pasture there. So summer they're going to need shade, and goats like to be kept out of the rain. So they can go. Keep your eye peeled for running gears, old hay wagons. See a bargain. See what Salton says, you can never have too many trailers. I'm almost getting there and run out of parking. I see one, I buy it because they're so useful to have these. And a lot of ours, this is the Cadillac where we're actually milking there back when we were more ambitious. But a lot of them are just the flatbeds. And then it works really nicely just to string a cattle panel over there and put a tarp on it. That's some shade on top. And of course, you can pull those with the four-wheeler or a little gold cart and pull those and pad up and pad out. String portability again. Portability of structures, and then some of these we pull into our winter yards. Yeah. So you don't have to have permanent structures anywhere if you don't want to. And protection for small ruminants also leads to, probably read about a lot of that stuff, but consider how you're going to keep these guys safe. The classics, probably the LGD there, the livestock guard dog. But we use those, and people use donkeys, people use llamas, and all kinds of good stuff out there. People have success, and not so much success with all of them. And one thing we really have found that's useful is just simply putting bells on some of these big rascals. And a lot of our lead tame animals are just old wethers, big giant things. We got one sheep, Howie, he must weigh about 400 pounds by now. And when he comes starting across the pasture, when we come there, the earth shakes. And any coyotes coming in there. So that's what they call that when sheep do that, starting, and it's supposed to disorient the predators. So, disorient me, so I believe. But he's just one of the friendliest guys we got. So. All right, and almost everything on our farm. These guys in this Mother Earth News thing doing this, they do a thing much like you guys do, like grazing weedy spots and stuff for landscaping, and they have 170 of them, but their criteria for everyone is, you gotta be able to put a collar on it. Can you imagine that? Catch everyone. We're close, but, so that's some of training animals. We depend on energized fencing for almost everything we do, out in the pastures. So this is a little training doodad here. We'll, see if I can get to play here. And, it should have a button on there, but I'm not seeing it. Oh, there we go. I'm gonna play it once and then do it again. You can see the fence.
How many times will they do that?
About once. Well, each, maybe twice. But, so, why do we laugh at that? That's what I want.
We're just happy it's not us.
Yeah. Oh, it's busy. Just gonna replay the well, we can stop it right there and see. So notice there's some rules here. We do this every spring. You have to have, and we've done it for wild stuff we bought too, adults. You do not put wild stuff in wire fences. People, starting farmers who've watched their $400 worth of sheep run into the woods and never seen them because they will put them, like you're supposed to, in an electric fence. Well, they didn't know what that was, so they did that. Or they'll jump out of a hog panel. Sheep can jump if they want to. So buy tame stuff. If you're going to get livestock, start small. Start with something you can handle. But if you're going to do this, you have to have a solid barrier behind it. You can see we got cattle panels in. So, and what that does is teach the animal to get shocked and back up. Their instinct is to get shocked and go forward. So every once in a while, they still will try to do that. But you got to have a pretty good load on your fence. And I think the rule minimum of 3,000. We like that 5 minimum. And for this, we often have 8 because it's a real super short little run. So it's easy to put a whole solar fence down there and get a lot of juice on it. But once they hit that a few times and the moms are trained, we just have no problems out in the pasture. Virtually no problem as long as there's not an extenuating circumstance going on out there. And we've even done it when we have just a few kids with their dairy goats. And we don't want to set up an elaborate deal. I'll just stick one wire out there just along the wall somewhere. And they'll inevitably go sniff the thing. And then they learn that way. Mom also knows. So they're trained. Okay, yeah, we won't be long here. Train them to the trailer before you need it. I'd even do this with steers we're bringing in to butcher. I'd start 3 weeks before, feed them in there. So then it wasn't the stress of butchered. All of our ruminants, goats and sheep, know what a trailer is. And they all know what oats are. Let them follow me. I'm chasing them. And you get some lead animals, and you pretty much got it made. So there's how we train them to the trailer, feed them in there for a while. They get used to hopping in, and here you can see we got about 1.5 feet there in that trailer. $800 trailer, probably if I'm somewhere. But they don't mind hopping in there when they want to get in there. Not a problem. And then you can just take it out in the pasture and it becomes your shelter. And when you're ready to go, if you're not moving this into a next door pasture, then just walk in there and they run after you. And close the door and you move on. You do have to have a tractor or something to hold it. So drawback of those. So trailer is their friend. And here's something, a lamb tractor. We got 3 willies, 1 spring, just to start trying out some sheep. And we did not put them right in there at the beginning because they can boing out of there like nothing. So we had them in a tighter spot until they got used to us. We hand fed them a little bit, but 2 people could pull that around without too much trouble. I would recommend it. But it was all right. And one of those girls, with Freckles, became just our lead. She was so friendly. She got to live. Read her so that now I get to do shearing, which I don't love. But she's so friendly, and you have those super friendly lead animals. It makes everything easier. And then you can go out there and do whatever you want. 2 wires. All our perimeter fencing is 3 wires, so it just makes life pleasant. But I stuck this in here, just started doing grazing. We had some farmers, some of you know his cattle, super trained, super quiet, easy to handle, just a pleasure to learn how to do all this. And then a few years later, we did custom grazing for a couple of years, and that wasn't as much fun. We know how to handle cattle, but still, it's just no fun when you're just going out there. Oh, I hope those 2 SOBs come up to, just 2 of them out of that 40, and that's all it takes. And these weren't mine, so we couldn't get rid of them. And because, of course, what happens is the good ones all come in and go that way, and the bad ones go down on the wrong side of the fence that way. And so you just really had to make sure they were in the group. Like the guy said, you make sure the troublemakers are going to go through early, because otherwise they will cause trouble. So you learn to read your cattle that way. And then just a few more handling things on here. There's some super tame cattle we got to start with. And we did the old lasso method of catching this one where we had to, foot rod or something. But it's humane treatment. If you've got animals, you got to take care of them. Natural systems doesn't mean you don't take care of your animals. Cross the humane boundaries. So if you're going to have cattle, how are you going to catch that thing in the pasture? We're a half mile from home here. Could have walked the whole herd home, but so think about that, and that's where the portable corral panels come in really well. Chemical restraint is an option too, but just think about how you're going to do that. Doing this is dangerous for you and the animals. It's easy to get pinned behind that rope, and particularly if you're a novice at it, it's pretty hairy. Animals are big and move really fast. Yep. Okay. Goats are nice because you can just grab them. And this is an anesthesia, so in cut foot, that's easy. Grab her, knock her out. Sew it up, bandage it. So another reason we get small movements. And handleability, Dan's holding that thing. So I just know how to handle these things in ways that maybe you're not thinking you're going to have to get some advice or help. Think about how you're going to do it. So with that, I'll quit. That question later.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. We got to squeeze Jim in here quick.
5 minutes, sorry, Joe.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got pictures.
he's getting that up, I'll just say I'm gonna talk about pigs. Hogs are only herd animals, not manner speaking. They have 4 feet. That's about as far as the similarity goes. They have little or no following instinct. They're basically an American in terms of being an individualist. They have to make up their own minds about everything they want to do. So you've got to, keep that in mind. And I could talk a little bit about electric fences and pigs, but I don't have any slides to go with that. And just suffice it to say, you can do a lot with electric fences with pigs. It's more important that you have the right soil than to worry about the electric fence. The electric fence will work. I'm going to talk a little bit about everything wrong, or at least a bunch of things wrong on my farm. This is our hog loading chute that I'm standing in. I was trying to get an idea, I'll give you an idea about the width of the thing. And of course, that's my dog who lives right under my feet. She had to be in there. Basically, what I was trying to demonstrate there, and have I got a clicker here?
Yeah, shoot right there.
Yep. That one?
Yep.
Okay. Which is forward? The red one?
No, that's the one on the right.
One on the right? Okay, yeah, that's without me in there. Basically, that chute is for hogs, for loading hogs. It comes downhill, that's good. And it has a threshold that you can't see on the bottom there so that they can step right onto we have a pig moving trailer, it's only a 6-inch step. But with pigs, it's a good idea to have them be able to just walk right across. Nothing to step on. We don't load a livestock trailer here. It's a high-low trailer that we use. That you see the squeeze gate up on top. The problem here is that chute is 6 inches too narrow. And it also, it's about room for a pig and a half, market weight pig and a half to come down there. And of course, so pigs will always decide it's going to be 2 at a time. That's the way they want to come down a chute. That chute should be 6 inches wider, and then it should have a bump off 1 pig length before it gets to the high-low trailer to stop the one. The one has to wait, the other one can step forward. They want to come together in pairs or in a whole scrum, and it's not really a herd, but they want to come together, and if the chute is longer, what you should have is the dividing fence in there too that they can see through. So they can see each other walking side by side, but they can't interfere with each other. We, on a chute this short, you wouldn't try for that, but you should have a bump off here to stop the one pig. Then that pig has to wait until the next opportunity and then can come forward. That chute is 6 inches too narrow. And there's another view of it. This is an alley in our sow feeding area. We feed the sows in 3 groups in feeding stalls, and again, with this alley, moving the sows out is a little like squeezing toothpaste through this thing here. They want to go 2 at a time. They don't want to go at all. One goes out and wants to come back in. This is another issue. We need it to get to the housing for the one group. I don't know what else to do. We've got to figure out something else. We've learned how to use it, but it's not easy. Yeah, dairy cows would walk down something like that with no problem at all. Sows won't. There's another picture of the same thing. It's in a hoop, as you can see, and so on. This is our cattle loading. This chute too, 6 inches too wide. The hog loading chute is 6 inches too narrow. The cattle loading chute is 6 inches too wide. Anything under, say, a year of age can try to turn around in that thing. That's no good. Our mistake was to put it together permanent before we knew what we were doing. So you can imagine that plank fence that's cut from railroad chunks, redwood, some of it, and so on, and it's fastened into the post with pole barn spikes. So anybody wants to come and help. This is, the whole presentation here is how you need to leave room for yourself to do it wrong first a couple of times and then get it right. So try not to spend a lot of money the first time because you're going to have to change things a lot. This is our farrowing pens in our new central farrowing house. This is already 3 changes that we've made to make this thing work. We had to blind the one creep panel there so that the sow can't see the sow on the other side of the center alley. We were feeding them in the center where that black gate is. We moved that this way to get the sow to run the pen right. There's an awful lot of things that I don't have time to talk about, and I wish I did, about sow behavior. Again, this animal is an individualist. It won't work unless you can figure out a way to convince her that she's doing it how she wants to do it. And so we had to modify that pen 3 different times. And we're pretty close now. It's starting to work. Has to do with the slope, has to do with the open area. A sow always wants to, if she's farrowing in a pen situation, she always wants to get into a pen and back into a blind area. She wants to feel safe from one side. Then she'll have her pigs there, and she'll watch you where we're standing here, because you're the enemy or you're probably the predator or whatever. This is why you never lose baby pigs to coyotes. If you've got a hut out in a pasture, that sow will lay there with her jaws within about a foot of that opening, and there's no coyote that's going to come past that. When they're out running around loose, 2 weeks later, yeah, then maybe, but not when they're farrowed. And you need to understand those principles to make a farrowing pen work. That's about as much as I can say. I tell you I will do that. Oh, that was another view of the same thing. And then that's a compensation for the lousy weather we've had to cope with the last week. I get to look at this when I'm having my coffee.
We have so much to cover and we are out of time. So our panelists, I believe, are around for the day. Maybe you can grab them if you have more questions, but let's give them a round of applause. So thank you much. We have lunch break now, so yeah, see you this afternoon. Thank you.